Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to the New Relic and BetTech webinar on why the gaming industry is backing the favorite New Relic. What we've got for you today is approximately 45-50 minutes of presentations and discussion, talking about how New Relic addresses some of the challenges in the gaming and betting industry. During that, we have a customer of New Relic's from BetTech who are going to talk about how they're using New Relic to help them deliver their service to their customers. Some housekeeping during this webinar. Today's webinar will be recorded and a link will be emailed out to everybody that registered. If you want to review it after the session or you want to share it, then by all means feel free to do so. Please ask questions. At the end of this session, we will have an extended period of time where we can answer any questions which have been raised, either during the main presentations or at the end. If you can ask those via the questions panel in the GoToWebinar control, then we will come to those at the end of the session. And then there will be a brief survey that's sent out afterwards, which we use basically to help us refine the content that we deliver during these sessions and make sure that it's relevant to you and giving you what you need. So please do fill that in, because it helps us improve the service that we offer. First of all, here's the agenda for the session today. We're going to run through about approximately 20 minutes with myself, Neil McGowan. I'm the Director of Digital Intelligence in EMEA for New Relic. And I'm going to talk about how specifically in the gaming industry, we're helping drive innovation at speed with New Relic. That will be followed by our customer. We're very pleased to have Ian Barnes, the Head of Architecture at BetTech, on the line, who will be taking about 20 minutes again to talk about how using New Relic is helping them to gain meaningful insights into their applications. And then, as mentioned earlier on, we'll have an open Q&A session where we'll field the questions or comments that are posted in the questions panel during this session. So without further ado, let's start. So as I mentioned, Neil McGowan, I'm based in EMEA for New Relic, and my role is about trying to explain how New Relic's platform can help drive digital intelligence within your organization. So what does that actually mean? Well, fundamentally, we're seeing a huge transformation in the way that organizations do business nowadays. The way that people, customers interact with their services and suppliers is through primarily a digital channel. So now your brand is the digital experience. If you think about, for example, Domino's Pizza, you might think that they're a pizza company with a website, but fundamentally they're a technology company which is providing a channel to be able to deliver pizzas. And that's borne out by the volume of sales that we're seeing in terms of their digital channel and mobile channel. Similarly, I can't remember the last time I actually went into a bank. I don't know about the people on this call here today, but most of banking now is done via mobile devices. Today, in fact, is the 50th anniversary of the first ATM being installed in the UK with Barclays. You know, what we're seeing on the retail banking side of things is the move towards digital channels, being able to actually replace an entire branch with a single ATM machine, allowing you to open accounts and so on. So the digital channel, even in the financial services sector, is becoming more and more important. And then finally, in the betting and gaming space, apologies. I've just been told that the slides aren't actually moving on, so bear with me 1 second while I rectify that. Okay, my apologies for that, and let me just see if we're seeing the right slide. Excellent. So apologies for just a few glitches there. As I was referring to, the digital experience is your brand experience now, and I talked about the Domino's Pizza example and the financial service example, but particularly in the betting space, Sky Bet here in the UK is a large customer of New Relic's. They're seeing that 80% of their revenue is coming through mobile. So that idea that the digital experience is your brand experience is no more true than in the betting and gaming industry. In a recent survey by the Gambling Commission in the UK, it found that there was almost parity between the profits that were gained between non-remote sports betting and remote sports betting and bingo and casino and gaming. So perhaps the most important thing is to look at the growth of that revenue, that profit from remote gaming. It's been growing at roughly 100% year on year since about 2014. And now in 2016 has reached almost parity with the non-remote betting profits. And perhaps also significant is, as a result of the survey, it uncovered that the profits from non-remote gambling had declined by 2% in the year 2015-2016. So what we're starting to see is a trend where remote gaming, remote gambling is overtaking the traditional non-remote bricks and mortar, etc. So what are the top challenges that this industry faces in that shift, that paradigm shift towards the digital channel? Well, the first one really is competition. This is, providing a mechanism where anybody can enter into the market. Ian will later on be talking about how his organization actually supplies some of those businesses that want to enter the gaming or sports betting arena with the technology to allow them to do that. So competition is fierce, very similar to the competition which we're seeing elsewhere in other industries, in the fintech industries and so on, and the digital e-commerce providers, etc. So how do you stay ahead of the game in terms of dealing with that competition? How do you grow your business and your market share within that highly volatile environment? And how do you innovate and accelerate time to market? It's a very, very fickle industry. People are always looking for the latest and greatest, so it's important that you keep pace with that demand and get your new products and your offerings out to market faster. Coupled with that, you have some other challenges around, regulatory compliance, the fact that you need to be responsible, that you need to be able to detect fraud and so on. The seasonality and scalability issues of this sort of business. So if it's sports betting, it might be, seasonal peaks like Grand National Day, Ascot, Cheltenham, or a football tournament like the Euros or the World Cup, etc., driving huge volumes in activity, and being able to scale to meet that demand is a huge challenge. And more recently as well, we actually had an announcement that the Football League in the UK is banning advertising from gaming organisations within the teams in the Football League. So there is more and more pressure in terms of how you can advertise what it is that you're offering and the ethics behind it. So how do you make the most of the opportunities that are available to you? How do you drive the right targeted marketing, and how do you ensure you get the return from that marketing to allow you to continue to grow your business and increase your market share? But there are some specific customer centric challenges that the business is facing. First of all, it's about reducing the cost of acquisition of new customers. And I think, one way that you can do that is by driving innovation and having a good reputation. So, being able to acquire customers through offering the latest and greatest in terms of options from a betting perspective or a gaming perspective, and having the reliability and the reputation with your existing customers for recommendation, rather than having to spend huge sums trying to bring them on board with incentives, etc. The second thing is, improving customer retention. Again, we're seeing, innovation as a key to this, making you be able to differentiate yourselves from others, but also providing the performance, the reliability, the customer experience and satisfaction that they require. It's very easy for a customer to switch between providers, and it's a very fickle industry in that space. If your site isn't performing, or it's not allowing a customer to place the bet when they want to place the bet, then they'll very quickly go elsewhere. And then finally, it's about increasing the average spend of the customer. And again, innovation, it seems a common theme here. You're going to drive more spend by offering new games, new options, new ways to bet. You need to be competitive in terms of the odds that you're offering, etc., and to be able to manage that and differentiate from your opposition and deliver the performance and the scalability so that they continue to use your service as opposed to somebody else's. So as I mentioned, it's a very fickle business. This is actually from a survey of mobile apps for retailers, and it shows how fickle they are in that space. And I understand that the gaming industry is even more fickle. If the app doesn't work, or it's slow, or they're having problems finding the options that they want in terms of placing the bet that they want, then they'll switch to another provider almost straight away. So, excuse me. As you can see here, 46% that have a negative experience even in the retail space are likely to switch to another app. 54% will delete it and after repeated problems, and then that adds to your problems of customer churn and the cost of customer acquisition, etc. So what are organizations doing to try and address these challenges? Well, they're changing both the technology that they're using to deliver the services and the processes by which they create the services in their own right. They're adopting new modern technologies, and you'll hear about the stack that BetTech are using, and new modern approaches in terms of driving fast-paced innovation within their businesses. So everything is changing. The technology is changing, and customers are building applications on top of dynamic infrastructure that expands and contracts to satisfy the seasonality requirements, etc. The processes that they adopt in terms of the development and delivery of services are changing to more of a DevOps approach to enable them to have faster velocity. And the business itself is changing as well. So, new business models and new revenue streams are appearing through innovation. New ways of making money for your business are being discovered every day. So in this changing world where we've previously had static infrastructure that was very well controlled and safely guarded, we're now very much in a dynamic world where things are being created and destroyed on a regular basis. A recent study of containers, for example, that New Relic's been managing for as many thousands of customers, uncovered that 11% of all containers in the world that we've monitored existed for less than 1 minute. So things that were here today, or here yesterday, or here an hour ago, are no longer there. So how do you manage that dynamic environment? How do you manage the environment where you're constantly releasing changes into that environment? And how do you join up the organization so that everybody has a clear view of what's happening and is engaged in delivering the same outcome? Well, the way you do that is by changing your approach. So instead of monitoring things as we have done in the past, what you need to do is you need to start thinking about monitoring the entire life cycle. And this is where New Relic comes in terms of delivering innovation at speed. Fundamentally, New Relic has a place or a part to play in every step of the software development lifecycle and the release of those software assets into your production environment and the ongoing maintenance. It used to be the case that thinking about monitoring was done at the point of just before deployment into production. Well, it needs to be something which is baked in from day one. It needs to be something which is considered at the design phase, the development, the build, the test, the deploy, and the ongoing monitoring phase. And it needs to be something which is frictionless and collaborative. So monitoring and management shouldn't get in the way of delivering that pace of innovation. So how does New Relic help in the design phase? Well, release 0 or release 1 of an application or a service, it possibly doesn't have a lot to offer because it's completely new. We haven't seen anything of it. But once you start creating that application, and certainly after the first deployment of that application, New Relic can help by dynamically mapping the application dependencies and the endpoints, giving you a view as to the architecture behind that application and helping you make decisions as to whether or not you want to refine that or change that. And it can help document the design with those maps, understanding what the key transactions are that are going through that application, and identifying the key metrics that you need to monitor from that application in order to determine whether or not you're achieving your desired outcomes. From a development point of view, well, we have hundreds of thousands of developers out there that are using New Relic on a daily basis to help them improve the code quality from the outset, being able to look at exactly how efficient their code is, where the errors are coming from, and helping them build performance and quality in at a very, very early stage. That gives them, the visibility into where the time's being spent, how they can make service improvements in performance of their code, optimizations, and then, drilling down even to understanding, how the SQL perhaps that they're calling, or the specific transaction that they're calling is performing, and where the time's being spent in the overall method. So building code quality and performance in from the outset. Then when it comes to the build phase, we have a number of customers that are actually using New Relic to track within Insights the number of commits and builds that the development organization are making. In fact, some of our customers are almost gamifying this with having weekly or monthly awards to those that have created the most commits or builds, and holding people up as examples of how they're driving innovation as a result of successful builds and so on. And then in the testing phase, well, there's a number of things that you can do with New Relic. You can use New Relic synthetics to help run functional testing and user testing to be able to determine the functionality of the application. You can understand how individual transactions are performing, etc., using those, and understand where the bottlenecks are coming from. But in addition to that, by automatically instrumenting your code with New Relic, you automatically get a view into what's happening when you do your full functional and load testing. So you can start to remove any performance regressions that might have been introduced as a result of the changes before they necessarily reach the production environment. And then in the deploy phase, we can help automatically instrument any new instances, nodes, or containers that are created. So as I talked about, that very dynamic environment where things are being created and destroyed, well, we can have more of an event-based approach to monitoring the assets and that are created when a piece of code is deployed or when a piece of code is executed. And then we can also integrate the alerts with the deployment process so that we can help roll back bad deployments where we see that we've introduced a regression issue or a performance regression. And this is something that Ian will talk about shortly. In terms of tracking those deployments, we can see straight away, whether or not we've had an improvement or a degradation. So here you can see in this particular example, we've got a huge increase in the number of errors that are being introduced or created as a result of a specific deployment. So maybe this is something that we should be looking at in terms of perhaps rolling it back. And similarly, from a performance perspective, we can see whether or not our deployments have had a hit in terms of the transaction response and also the amount of resource which is being consumed in order to deliver that volume. And as a result, we can determine whether or not we should be doing things to either improve or roll back, etc. And similarly, from an individual transaction perspective, we can very quickly visualize the gains which have been made as a result of the changes that we're introducing into our environment. So finally, when it comes to maintaining and managing the environment in production, well, yes, we can track incidents and relate them back to the changes which have occurred in the environment. We can also manage the very complex nature of that environment by creating the service maps based upon the automatic discovery of what's talking to what, and we can understand, where your traffic's coming from and how that traffic is being supported. That enables us to collaborate more effectively. We can bring teams together to troubleshoot things. We can integrate with chat solutions such as Slack, etc., that allow you to start to collaborate in terms of trying to resolve a problem. Teams working together with a single goal in mind to determine where the problem's coming from and ultimately find the root cause and resolve the issue more quickly for your customers. When it comes to collaborating effectively, people are interested in different things. So there might be local KPIs that certain people are interested in. There may be more global KPIs which other groups are interested in terms of the revenue, etc. And this is because, as part of the continuous improvement with New Relic, what we're trying to do is to bring all of that information together to allow teams to collaborate more effectively. And those teams, they have a whole range of players within them. That's behind every app that you produce, there's a team which goes beyond just operations and development, but it also includes, product management, customer care executives. And by using New Relic, they're able to focus on the things that really matter to them. So whether that's the business outcomes, so how much revenue are we taking, what's our conversion rate like, understanding what the performance is like for the users and what the users are actually doing, or whether it's drilling into particular applications and how those applications are being served across geographies or over certain devices. So this is where the New Relic software management framework comes into play. Fundamentally, it's about ensuring engineering velocity, so helping you reduce lead time, be more successful in your deployments, and resolve any issues that are introduced faster. It's about driving service quality as well, so improving uptime, reducing the number of errors, and making sure that you are delivering successful deployments, but then providing the information that allows you to manage your application and your infrastructure performance from a dynamic services perspective, understand the customer engagement from helping with a customer retention side of things and customer satisfaction side of things, and also understand how your applications are delivering to your business. So what's the bet value or volume that we're processing? How are we performing in terms of successful marketing campaigns, etc. So that's the New Relic Digital Intelligence Platform. We've got over 15,000 customers using it and 500,000 users. As a SaaS provider, we're able to help you implement faster and deliver results faster, and then scale with your business to meet your demands, which Ian will be talking about in just a few seconds. But on top of that, we have the ability to provide full stack visibility into the performance from a customer perspective through mobile, browser, and synthetics, the look inside the application to understand the performance and what's going on there, and the underlying dynamic infrastructure, and then provide the visibility on top of that to drive actionable insights. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Ian from BetTech, the head of architecture, who's going to talk about how they're using New Relic to gain meaningful insights into their applications.
Yeah, so I'm Ian from BetTech, as Neil has said. I'm head of product architecture at BetTech. I've been with the organization for many years. But yeah, let me start talking and explaining about what we do at BetTech. So we're a sportsbook and casino platform. We provide a platform to sportsbook operators and kind of casino operators who want a platform to run their businesses, essentially. We do everything from your traditional retail sports betting, so your bricks and mortar stores, through to your online sites, your Mobi. We have an API that can be used for building applications, and then all the regulatory requirements around that. So in the various jurisdictions, there are many regulatory concerns that we need to adhere to, as well as from a reporting, know your customer, all those kind of things. We all have to take that into account as part of our platform. We currently service multiple countries. We primarily in Africa, that's our focus. South Africa being the key market for us, but we are around in a few African countries as well. With our application, currently we deploy that application for each of our clients to a set of infrastructure for them. Again, due to various regulatory concerns and things like that, it's a fairly slow moving change from what the regulators are happy with. So while archaic in terms of the new deployment possibilities, it is something that we're moving towards rapidly. And then the last point there being around our peak times are not your peak times, meaning that when we come to monitoring and understanding how an application works and performs, we need to do that on a Saturday evening when the majority of the big sporting events are on. As an aside to that, rollouts and things happen in normal work hours for us, but when we really need to understand things is unfortunately when most of us want to be taking weekends. So that's why having a great monitoring system is very key to us being able to understand a holistic look at what was happening at a certain point in time, should we be looking into an incident that has happened. So one of the things that you'll notice about what the few slides that I've got here is around how New Relic kind of helped us evolve what we wanted to do, and because of the low barrier to entry that they provide. It's a very simple starting point, but you can really expand on from there. So if I look at the tech stack that we use, so we as a platform company make use of entirely open source software. Everything runs on Linux, kind of Percona for data stores, through to Apache, Redis, bit of Memcache, Elasticsearch, RabbitMQ, kind of all those things living on the infrastructure side as applications that we don't manage. Our application itself is primarily written in PHP. We use Node.js, Golang, Angular, and a bit of NPM2 for some items that we do. That tech stack is evolving as we're evolving, as we find areas that are not optimally suited for a certain language. Again, this is where New Relic is coming in, is to help us understand where those areas are before it happens on a Saturday evening. And yeah, so how did we get started with New Relic was many years ago, I think about 3 or 4 years ago now, we had our own custom monitoring setup that we built using 2 open source platforms that are available. And while it was great for those that were involved in the setup, it wasn't something that became scalable for us. Every set of, or every client that we deployed, we had to remember all these weird convoluted ways of getting everything plugged in. So actually getting somebody to, or one of the developers or one of the systems administrators to actually do anything became difficult. So the ease of setup of those was a really challenging factor. The customization of metrics became an interesting point as well. We could get a lot of benefit from various open source kind of monitoring frameworks that were provided, but they gave us a lot of information at a high level, and we started needing to look deeper and to understand what was causing certain spikes in our graphs. And with these applications, we'd have to write completely custom software to manage or to track that information. Then the next one came up one Saturday evening when we didn't pick up that there was an incident because the monitoring server was part of the data center that had lost connectivity. So that brought up the question of who will guard the guards themselves, and that we would need to get a monitor to monitor our monitoring situation, which is obviously not a great thing to have to do. And then we sat back and thought, okay, well, we need to really just focus on what we're good at. And what we do is we build a platform. We're not a monitoring company, and that's where we found New Relic. And what it allowed us to do was just get going with something simple and evolve as we went along. So that's entering New Relic. And for the first thing, all that we did was we replaced every single one of our server monitors with the New Relic server monitor. It was a super quick install. It took us 4 hours to roll it out to all of our infrastructure. I think that was over 60 different nodes at that point in time. That was not orchestration controlled. So we rolled it out within a couple of hours. There was universal OS support. At that point, we were dealing with a few different base OSs for some of the auxiliary services that we had. And what that allowed us to do was just consolidate everything into one platform where we could build in alerts based on various just server threshold metrics and plug that straight into PagerDuty, which we were using to actually trigger push notifications and kind of scheduled based notifications for when something was happening. So it changed our approach from being a pretty much reactive to a reactive to a preemptive. We would know when things were happening before our clients could notify us of something. So whether it would be CPU spiking on a server, we would actually be able to start looking at it already. And yeah, as I said, that only took us 4 hours to roll out. So it was very, very, very simple to do, and what led us on to the next stage, which was now that we had the server monitoring, we thought, okay, cool. Now we want to just monitor the applications that we don't write. We're not in control of them. We're just installing and monitoring them. So New Relic again had that excellent plugin feature where we could just go and have a look at plugins that everybody else had done. And within a day, we had set up monitoring of all those services within New Relic. Again, making use of the alerts that come built in with it, the reporting that comes built in with it, and the single platform to monitor all of those applications. And those applications range from your standard Apache web servers through to, we were even at one stage monitoring a VPN server through there, which, yeah, we kind of plugged everything that we could think of into it at one point, just to get a consolidated view of what we needed to be keeping our eyes on. And that, again, without writing a single line of code. We had to just change configurations on some of the software to allow the monitors to plug in, but no lines of code were written at all for any of that to be effective. So at this point, what we had was our servers were monitored. The applications that we didn't write were being monitored, and then it got into, right, now we needed to actually start monitoring our application in detail. So we would now know when the web server was loaded, but we didn't know why the web server was loaded. And that's where the APM comes in. So we just took the default install. Initially, we ran it, we installed it, we restarted everything, and we started getting metrics. These metrics, while we didn't understand fully the power of New Relic at that point, we started being able to see slow stack traces. We could, we could pull out SQL queries that were inefficient under load. And what we also could see there was, once we have pushed a release out, we could actually see that there was no additional load or slowness being caused by that release. So we were being able to have regression testing, or not regression testing, regression monitoring enabled by default. So what we did was we made a simple change to our deploy software that we use, which was a custom written script to actually tag in New Relic every single time we did a release. We didn't make it too fancy. We just threw in a version number, and we just started looking at that. And so over time, we could see that we were making the right improvement in terms of load. And yeah, it kind of led us on to just, we really wanted more data at that point. So we knew that it was great. We knew that it was going to be beneficial for us, but we really needed to actually get more from it. So what we did was we started looking at custom transactions. So we would go and change our application, and we had this amazingly brilliant idea of that we would create a transaction for each flow or each method inside our application. So we came up with this genius solution of how to globally name transactions for every single function or method that was called. And it took us only 2 hours to do. We were super excited. We rolled it out, and then in a few hours, we got a letter or a support ticket by the kind folks at New Relic, just asking us, or just like inquiring and saying that we now all of a sudden created a hell of a lot of large metric names had been created, and that there was no problem with it, but they were worried that when we started running reports that they would be meaningful. So yeah, the time to roll back there took 10 minutes after we realized that that really wasn't the ideal solution. But it again led us to just kind of take stock of what we were trying to achieve. And what that brought us back to was that we needed to think about what information we really wanted from it. And we started naming just those functions. We went in, found those methods, named them correctly, and then we really started getting the best metrics that we could for it. We set thresholds on the different key transactions that we wanted to monitor, and immediately it became even better in that we didn't need to sift through bunches of data to find something. When a client had reported on a Saturday afternoon that the retail interface was performing slowly in one of their branches, we could immediately log on, find where we could see the load had gone up on all the graphs on the dashboard that we built, and immediately just by going into the stack trace, we could pull out exactly what was happening at that point in time. It made the on-call support and the development teams, they immediately could be very proactive, informing the clients of where the problem existed exactly, and then detailing to the relevant resources how we needed to address that problem. On the same time, we implemented metrics on the command line, or the cron, or the system, the daemons that we're running, and the benefits we got from there were also very impressive. We have a bunch of applications that process feed information, which is your content that you're getting from the like for the events that are happening at that point. So if you're wagering on an English Premier League match, we're getting information about that continuously. We're getting gigs and gigs and gigs of it every second. And yeah, we could see where in testing we didn't notice that at peak times we would perform slightly differently. So it enabled us to make really meaningful optimizations to our system based on just seeing what happened under real world load. Even things that didn't happen under simulated load testing, we could see quite efficiently there. And I think what we've realized with it is how we've really only begun to scratch the surface on what we can do with the suite of New Relic products. We now, when we build applications, they come built in with detailed metrics for APM monitoring. It's something that we look at so that we make sure that it's not something that we want to go and plug in after the fact. We want to know about these things from day one. We are using browser metrics to improve our retail interface, not just from a, how small can we get the JavaScript, but really how does the browser handle these interactions? Where do the slowdowns occur? Are we seeing huge network latencies? How do we improve delivery of bet slips? All those sorts of things which we can now actually start using browser insights into, which we would never have been able to do without a product like such as this. And then, as Neil has mentioned, the insight dashboards, the information that the different business units want to see is vastly different across an organization. Developers care about seeing how many errors are going through and that the load is running stably. Your ops teams care about your overall application health, whereas your business teams, they really care about how many bets you're going through and how much money you're making. And due to that, we can pull various insights from the relevant places on that or in New Relic into one place, and again, using a single system, a single interface, provide this information to those various teams. They don't have to worry about how that information is provided. They don't have to worry about any of that. They can just get that information. And yeah, so to summarize, we started out very simply. We picked the low-hanging fruit first. We dipped our toes, went very overboard, pulled it back a bit, and then we settled on sensible and meaningful metrics. And yeah, the key to all of this was New Relic was enabling us to utilize more of the functionality within their platform as our requirements grew. It was not a single, you have to use everything. It's a very scalable platform in terms of from a billing point of view as well. You use as little or as much as you need. There's no lengthy contracts. It really just worked well from us growing organically within the platform, within the New Relic platform. So yeah, I think that was the last slide. So yeah, thank you. Any questions or anything like that? Would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ian. Appreciate that overview of how you've implemented New Relic at BetTech. Excuse me. I do very quickly need to make an apology to people on the line. We appear to have been having some technical problems with GoToWebinar.
Yes.
So some of you may have struggled. I think it's in general with GoToWebinar. So what we will do for sure is that we will clean up this recording. And we'll send out a recording of the entire session to everybody that registered in case you had some connectivity issues during the session. But we'll make sure that there is a clean copy. I think that may also be why there's no questions in the question section. But I've got a couple of questions for you, Ian.
Sure.
I was very interested by the fact that you said that you're building your applications with the metrics and the monitoring in mind. So what sort of metrics are you looking at trying to pull out of your applications that will help you as a business and your customers that are consuming your services?
So it varies quite a bit depending on the team. So we're looking at it quite holistically from what would we want to see without having to build reports and things like that. So from a development point of view, we'll be looking at information that is relevant to the developers, so errors, any weird cases that would be exceptions, anything like that would be tracking from a developer point of view. And then from a business point of view, we're starting to build in metrics around bets that have been placed, for example. It's a very simple example, but instead of trying to build another system to track it, if we're sending data off to New Relic for monitoring already, we might as well throw in other supplementary information, which we can then use to just create a dashboard. So it's kind of a very holistic approach to that. On the browser side of things, that's kind of I'd say a new area. We used the browser thing a few years ago just to optimize a customer that we were working with. But now we've really started using it to pick up syntax errors, anything weird like that we don't pick up in either our automated builds, our QA or regression tests that we do manually. It helps us to pick up kind of in the wild scenarios without yeah, the customer having to notify us of them.
Right. So one of the interesting use cases for browser is it actually it shows you how your customers are actually using the applications as opposed to
Exactly.
how you think they're using the applications. So that helps you diagnose issues that they may be having, but also it helps you shape the solutions that you offer.
Exactly.
You can validate whether or not the functionality, the way that you expect a user to journey through your application is actually the way that they are doing it. And
exactly, yeah. We've had a few examples. We've had a few examples of that actually, where we heard via the grapevine or from certain customers that what we needed to build was feature X within our retail platform. We went ahead and built it. We turned it around super quickly. And then once we rolled it out, we just saw no one using it. And then once we started looking at their behavior and how they actually used it, we noticed that it was something that they completely overlooked. So with a small tweak to what we'd done, immediately it became a very beneficial feature for them, and one that still gets used widely now.
Okay, that's interesting to hear that that insight enables you to make a decision which has a direct impact on the business and the use of the applications that you provide.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do have just one other question for you with regard to your business model, because I mean, obviously you provide services to the betting and gaming industry. You can provide, if you like, a business in a box, if you like, for your customers. But those customers of yours have end consumers. So how does the end consumer experience impact what you deliver as a service provider to the industry?
So yeah, while we are primarily a B2B company in that we service the bookmakers, our platform and what we can offer wouldn't be anything of value if we weren't taking into account the end consumers. And so for that, we do need to look very carefully at how they interact and how their experience is with using our platform across whatever channel we're talking. So understanding how they do things, where their pain points would be with our application, it is something that we really have to do. And our product teams do actually spend a fair amount of time looking at to understand, else we would just be irrelevant.
Okay, so that's great. I mean, you're basically saying that their customers are your customers at the end of the day. If you don't satisfy them, then you don't get the repeat business.
Exactly, and I mean, as you mentioned in yours, the online betting space, particularly retail, you still, depending on your location, you still have a bit of leeway for poor experience because it might be the closest bricks and mortar shop to go to. But from an online and a mobile point of view, the customers, or the punters in this case, they have such a vast choice of platforms to make use of. And if you're not doing it right, they're going to find somebody else who is. So you have one shot to do it and to do it well. And for that, you need great tooling to assist you in that. Okay,
we do have one question which is directed at you, hopefully, from your own personal experience. This comes from Adrienne, and it's, is there any significant overhead that comes with the new Relic implementation?
Yeah, so I mean, we've done it under quite extreme load. I'm not sure, again, how this extreme load compares to others, but for us, it was a really busy couple of days, and we were hammering a couple of our customers' setups, and we didn't notice anything super significant. Obviously, if you are doing detailed logging on a whole bunch of things, there is going to be a slight performance impact on that, as there would be with any platform, but it wasn't something unmanageable.
Okay, thanks for that. And I mean, from my side, from the vendor's perspective, You know, every customer is different in terms of what their applications are doing and the amount of instrumentation that you want to do in those applications. But as well as trying to offer a frictionless experience from you know, deploying the agents and getting insights back, we also pride ourselves on having a minimal impact on the performance of your applications, because if we affect the performance of your applications, then that affects your scalability. So, but it's you know, every customer is different depending upon their applications.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. There are no more questions in the question box for the GoToMeeting or the GoToWebinar session. So with that, I would very much like to thank you, Ian, for taking part and giving us the benefit of your experience with New Relic. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending. As mentioned, we will create a recording of this session. We'll clean it up to cater for any issues that there might have been with connectivity, and we'll send that out to everybody that registered for this session. So thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you.